Hello, everyone, and welcome to 180 Degrees of Impact. My name is Matt Scott, and today I'm joined by Blake Sorensen. Blake, how's it going today?
It's going great. I'm happy to be here, Matt.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you and to dive in. I was introduced to your story when I was listening to the Pitch podcast just over a year ago, and of course, I know a lot has happened since then. And I really want to dive in and share what you're working on, share Blake's seed-based bars with anyone who's listening or watching. I have one of my Blake seed-based bars right here also. And so just want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and who you are, Blake.
Yeah, so my name is Blake Sorensen, as you mentioned. I'm out of Chicago, Illinois, and in the food business. So we make seed and fruit snack bars and protein bars that are allergy friendly. And I'm sure we'll kind of get into it, but it really started out of a need. I have a definitely nut allergy and was really struggling, so kind of solved a problem out of my own need.
Yeah, and that's the part of your story that really resonated with me as someone with a deathly nut allergy. And so I'm just thinking back to when I even first heard your story, but I'm just sitting there listening to a podcast that I enjoy listening to, and then of course I hear your story, which hits close to home. And one thing that you mentioned that really hit close to home on in your appearance on the show was just talking about how, you know, one day, I mean, if it hasn't happened already, someone dying from having a nut reaction on a plane. And that's something that resonates with me as someone who has had an allergic reaction on a plane. And so I just kind of want to get into what is it that actually motivated you to start Blake Seed Based, other than the obvious, definitely not.
Yeah, so the concept started actually in a social entrepreneurship course in grad school at Indiana University. We were posed a question to solve a social need. So, what's one thing in the world that, you think you have the ability to make an impact on and change, and, took some time to kind of think about my background, my skill set, and pretty quickly, look back. And the one thing I've always struggled with is food allergies. So that is what, was really kind of my why and the problem I began to solve. Didn't know a ton about the food industry or even the food allergen community, but kind of took one step at a time to learn more about it. That led to, making product in my kitchen and then doing a Kickstarter. And it's kind of led us to where we're at today. So really one step at a time, but really started with just the problem of having food allergy.
Yeah, so one thing I want to really ask about is, like, of course, your food allergy, as I think about 15 million people could relate. It affects your decisions on the day-to-day basis. But like, as someone with a nut allergy, I didn't go out there and create a seed-based bar or like an alternative that other people could also benefit from. And
Right.
so, like, do you know what it was that ultimately pushed you from, like, I have this problem and it's something I'm going to manage, to I have this problem and I'm going to try to solve it for, countless people all around the world? Because there are so many other things you could be doing with your life and your time, of course.
Yeah. So I think, the more I kind of looked into it and the more people I talked to, I really realized how big a problem it was. The new research will tell you that there's actually 32 million people in the U.S. with food allergies.
Wow.
So, 1 in 10 adults and 1 in 13 kids has a food allergy. It's not just the people with food allergies, it's really it also affects the people around you. So, for instance, I grew up in a family of 6. And because of that, we couldn't have products with food allergies. And my family in college, played sports at Wisconsin. There's 120 guys on the football team. And, for 4 years, the chef couldn't make products with nuts.
Right.
So pretty quickly realized, and this was early when I was making products in my kitchen, realized that not only did people who had food allergies like the product, people that also didn't have food allergies like the product. And we like to think that we're kind of bringing the two worlds together. It's for people with and without food allergies, and it's kind of creating an inclusive culture and kind of environment by just having snacks that, again, everyone can eat and are healthy and taste good.
Yeah. Before thinking of what you're doing though as a business and something that you could build out to create snacks that taste good, what was it that you wanted to do with your career? Did you have a certain path that you were already headed on? Was it football, or I'd love to hear just where you would have been if not right here.
Yeah, so my kind of career went to Wisconsin. Had a very short stint after Wisconsin with the Seattle Seahawks, and then worked for a few different startups, which got me excited, kind of got me introduced to the world of startups, and then went to grad school to kind of figure out what I really wanted to do. I think one theme in my life is I kind of got to be all in, and I got to to really put the time and effort in. I have to feel like I'm making a difference.
Yeah.
So I always felt like I would wanted to run my own business and figure something out, but there also had to be a deeper meaning on the why and the impact we're making. So it was kind of a light bulb moment. Didn't plan to have a food business, but as I kind of took a step back and said, what am I uniquely positioned to the problems to solve, and what's my skill set? It kind of all fell in place.
Yeah. I know a lot of people typically will start, at least the people I've spoken with through 180 Degrees of Impact will start doing whatever they're doing because they see some sort of, not just a need, but something that's a personal story that it relates to. So like yours with a nut allergy is one example, but other people with other circumstances then create something beautiful. What's it been like for you to translate your personal story into a business and into a business that actually is successful? Because of course it's Blake seed-based bars. Blake, you're the face of it, so to speak. And I wonder, what have been the challenges and the successes with leveraging your story?
It started with a personal problem, but what really gets me fired up is we get emails all the time about people that have food allergies and how we're impacting their lives. And that's what really gets me excited. And kind of how I mentioned before, I mean, we're starting with a few people, but if a few people are passionate about something and they spread the word, it can really make an impact. So although the company does have my name, it's really not about me. It's about helping others who have these problems, and really about bringing everyone together, the food allergy community and the non-food allergy community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there times though when your story doesn't translate for some reason? But I'd imagine that sometimes people just don't get why this is something that's so important.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you aren't familiar with food allergies, then you don't really, it wasn't really be top of mind. So a good example is, just really being on shelves is a good example. Our product is going, next to Kind Bar and Lara Bar and the big bar companies. So in that instance, as someone that doesn't have food allergies, we have to communicate, the other value props of the taste or the nutrition. We still have food allergies on it, but it's kind of two communities. It's like, we have how we speak to people with food allergies because we know it will resonate with them. And then we have other messages of, the taste and the nutrition and really the brand to everyone else.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about like this dynamic because again, you're creating something that you realize is personally relevant. There's a market out there that also has relevance to this because like looking at the bar, it's not just no tree nuts and peanuts, but it's also like no milk, no soy, gluten-free, non-GMO, so on and so forth. And so there's a lot of benefit there. But I guess the part that I think about, and I'm guessing someone who's watching this might think about, is how if you're talking to someone who has a problem and is considering starting a business, do you have an idea of when they should start a business versus when maybe a business isn't the best approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think just using my example, because I think there are a lot of ways you can give back, right? Whether there's organizations or money. In our instance, we started a business, but it really started organically. It started out of a class. I realized that some other people had this problem. That led me to, make a product that it really resonated with. So it wasn't that I started out and said, hey, I want to create this big business. We want to be everywhere. It was one step at a time that, all right, it's resonating with this person with food allergies. There's an impact here. Let's take the next step. And that is what ultimately, kind of led us. And that's what we're still doing. I mean, you're still figuring out, how we expand and how we tell a story. But the thing is we're solving a need. And I think for any business, at the end of the day, you either have to solve a problem or solve a need. And I'm convinced, because we hear it every day, that we are solving an important need, which ultimately, should help the business scale.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself like sharing those stories that people are, that people are sharing with you when it comes to the benefit of like seed-based?
Yeah, I mean, what we're trying to do, and we're looking to do this on our website, is just, exactly like you said, share some of the other stories, because we get emails every day. I mean, we got one last week from a family whose daughter had a nut allergy and a dairy allergy, and she's never been able to eat a bar before. And we got a long email about the convenience of how the product has improved their lives, and just how excited that she could bring a bar to school, and she felt like she fit in. So I think a big part of our kind of evolution is in our growth as a brand is getting other people involved to help share the stories of how a simple thing as a allergen-free bar is making their life better, and really focusing on what they're passionate about. We want to take care of the products and give products that are healthy, taste good, so they can go out and do whatever they want to do.
Yeah. Like thinking about again, back to just you building out this business, how long has it been to date since you started Blake Seed Base?
So we launched September of 2018. So just over a year old. I've been working on the concept since January of 2018. So about 2 years. So it's been, again, had no experience in the food industry. So it's been a steep learning curve, but because the story really resonates with people and we're solving need, people have been willing to help out.
How, what have those learnings or challenges been along, some of those learnings and challenges been along the way as you built this thing?
Yeah, I think kind of business in general is just a bunch of problems. Once you kind of fix one problem, there's a new problem as you scale. But the biggest thing was early on, how to figure out of making a product in your kitchen that you can eat, to then getting it in the hands of consumers. And our particular problem was we have to make it in a top 8 allergen-free facility. So the top 8 food allergies are what 90% of food allergies are caused by: peanuts, tree nuts, milk, eggs, soy, wheat, fish, and shellfish. And there are very few factories that can make products that are safe, and they don't have all those other allergens in the building. So I'd say that was really the biggest impact, because at the end of the day, we're selling safety. We're people are trusting us that we're making products that don't have those ingredients,
right,
that products are tested for. And if we don't have that, we don't have a business. So that was really, I would say, early on, the biggest hurdle that we had to solve.
Yeah. Just on the business side of things, as opposed to the food and creating snack bars side of things in the production, like was that something that you felt came naturally to you, or was there a learning curve for that as well?
It's been a total learning curve. I mean, I think one thing that I've relied on is just reaching out to people. Especially the entrepreneurial community. Who's the accountant you use? How'd you think of this problem? How'd you go about fundraising? And I have learned from my peers an incredible amount. I mean, wouldn't be where we're at today without so many different people helping the business and giving us advice and feedback. But I will say, I think, again, a lot of it comes back to they believe in the mission and they believe in what we're doing, so they are willing to help.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because just a couple days ago I mentioned this the Seed Spot boot camp that I was in, and something we were talking about is just the difference between the organizations or the people who are founding something and succeed, and then the ones who are founding something and then fail, or they're not able to get off the ground. And one thing we were talking about, which you just referenced, was that feedback, and how it could be tough just sometimes to take feedback when you feel so strongly about an idea.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that's something that you're big on, getting feedback and getting others' input. So like, where does that come from? Or I mean, even for me, I struggle with feedback sometimes. So like, do you have any tips on how to ask for and then actually integrate feedback, rather than kind of saying, I know what I'm doing, here's my plan?
I mean, I think the business will humble you pretty quickly. We've had instances where I didn't ask for feedback and kind of made a decision, and quickly realized that it wasn't the right move, and I should have got feedback or asked for help from other people. So I think it's a balance. I mean, you have to have a vision of where you want the company to be, but you have to constantly be asking people every step of the way for advice to help you get there. And without doing that, it'd be a bumpy road.
Yeah, yeah. Who have some of those people, who've been those positive influences been for you? Because you mentioned getting those kinds of support, but is there anyone in particular who has bolstered your work?
Yeah, we've had kind of different stages. So, in grad school, it was a lot of my classmates. So I used, the company, every class project, whether it was a marketing or finance, we actually would kind of use our company and say, hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish. So it started with my peers and my friends. We got a lot of help from professors. So we had two professors, Neil Morgan and Greg Fisher at Indiana University, that were incredibly helpful. And then, lately it's been people that know the industry. So we actually, have some advisors that have created allergy-friendly, food companies before, and that's who we're in contact with all the time. Just lately, as we kind of figure out if it's scale and retail and all these other things.
Hmm. Yeah, and just to kind of, it's cool to hear more about just some of the specific people or how they fit in, because it can be big to think, okay, I need to get feedback and inputs from everyone, when I think you kind of, even explain, just in terms of your classmates, professors, experts in the industry, how they're able to actually like, give feedback in really targeted ways that could benefit you and your work. So thinking about, though, just your journey as an entrepreneur, are there any like big lessons that you would have shared with yourself back in early 2018?
I think you just have to be. We just kind of went over, but about asking for advice. But you always have to be curious and
Yeah.
ask why things are the way they are, and if maybe challenge some of the things and to do things different. But I think for someone that's brand new to an industry, that knows they're green, you have to be extremely humble and willing to take feedback. And I feel like we've done that to some extent, but if I had to go back, I would say do it more, right?
Yeah.
Seek out industry experts, ask for more help, because we would have avoided a lot of mistakes that we ended up making by not doing that.
Yeah, yeah. So, but it's a good tip, at least, to think through where you could get that feedback, where you could avoid some of the mistakes that, probably others, like the people you're getting advice from, have run into. But another piece that I'd love to know is a vision of how many people you're trying to reach, or anything like that serves as your North Star, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, our North Star is to be everywhere, and the reason we want to do that is there's a real problem. There's a lack of allergen-free snacks, and the way that we solve that is we be in every grocery store, every convenience store, every gas station. So it's really about making the products accessible to individuals. That is the end goal, and really that comes down to distribution. But there's a lot of things that go into that, right? We have to keep up the safety of our product. We have to be able to sustain that growth. The products have to taste great, But the end goal is to be really a national brand that's solving an enormous problem, and that results in being everywhere the consumer is.
Yeah. I mean, I know this might be a kind of a tough question, but that makes sense for where the impact you see like seed-based making. Is there a separate impact or a bigger impact that you yourself see making on the world, or that you hope you can make on the world?
I mean, I think for the allergen community, I think I think we want to show people that, like, people with food allergies, just like everyone else, there's really nothing that can hold them back. So I think that's one thing. And, ideally, just as I've learned from other kind of entrepreneurs and people, and kind of realize that anything's possible, would love to be able to kind of spread that message back to someday to help people along, kind of their journeys to whatever they want to achieve.
Kind of, I think through just a couple of the other questions I have. One thing that I don't really ask a lot, but I'm curious if there's any insight or any realizations that you run into on a day-to-day basis that you realize are not that people might not be thinking about when it comes to business.
This sounds kind of basic, but I think just being kind. I think that matters. I think business sometimes can be super cutthroat, and as a new brand going against big national competitors, at the end of the day, it's about relationships and building relationships, telling your story, and kind of being likable. But I think that is something that has served us well. I mean, I think goes to people we hire and how we deal with people is, we want to build relationships and do it the right way, because that's what the life is about. So that would be the tip: is just be kind. I think it goes a long way, and it's a rare thing nowadays.
Yeah, and like, thinking about just getting feedback, being kind. Have there been any key highlights along the way that you're especially proud of?
So, yeah, I mean, I think there's been a few steps. One, was really when it was idea, we ran a Kickstarter campaign. And that was, without that, we had no money, and, without $20,000 in pre-orders, which is what we wanted on Kickstarter, the idea would have died. So we ran our Kickstarter. We had orders from people around the country. So that was a huge step in just people, saying, hey, we believe in this. And that really fueled us. That was the first one. The next one, we were part of the Kraft Heinz Incubator Program. So Kraft picked, 5 companies who they think can change the future of food. So it was incredibly humbling when a company like Kraft was willing to take us under their wing for 4 months and kind of nurture us and teach us the ways about how we can, get the word out about our company and make, great products that are safe. So that was a huge boost. And then lately has just been getting into retail. Our goal is to be where all the consumers are. We just launched Walmart, we're in Hy-Vee, we're in Jewel. So really working with these retailers to help correctly tell our story and why we exist has been awesome.
Yeah, and just thinking about your story and why you exist, I think I'm sure you mentioned hearing different stories from people who have those allergies, who are benefiting from your story. But just to share even a story of my own, as I was eating my snack bar, something that came up is just and something that you've probably experienced too, or other people who are suffering from allergies experience too, is just this idea, almost for me at least, this moment of disbelief, where I was like, wait, am I, in my head, I'm looking at the snack bar like, this isn't something I'm able to eat. I'm never able to eat snack bar. That's all to say, I really hope other people are able to kind of have those moments of disbelief, like, whoa, I could actually have something healthy that makes me feel great without having to worry at all about the allergens associated with them. So just wanted to thank you for that, for definitely bringing that to people.
Yeah, no, I think that's something that that's why we exist, for stories like that, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. And just speaking of stories and thinking about your story, Blake, I want to ask, as one of my wrap up questions that if your life were a book or documentary, what would the title be and why?
It's a great question. I think one thing would be I don't know what the title, but really you got to start with the end in mind. I think
Mm,
you kind of look at the bigger picture. Life is short, one, and you have to be super purposeful about why you're doing things. And when we started the company, it was all right. I want our products to be accessible everywhere and for people with food allergies, and really start with that vision and then kind of work backwards on how you get there. And I think whether it's whatever people want to achieve, if they want to start a foundation, if they want to learn to fly, whatever it is, really be purposeful and start with that goal, and always have that driving you, and then work your way back and figure out how you get there. I think that's something that I've tried to use in my life, and it's seemed to work.
I feel like it's so interesting, like even just listening to your answer, that I feel like the way that you approach business, you have this like level of discipline that you would see in an athlete that's getting ready to go on the football field or someone else who's training. Have you seen any of those, your experience as an athlete or other experiences translating into business? Because that's what I'm picking up on, but just wanted to call it out.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of how I approach business is from athletics. Growing up, I said I want to play college football, right, and I want to have shot at the NFL, and worked my way back. And it's really every other thing in my life goals I've had. I want to learn to play the guitar or whatever it is. If you want to learn to play the piano, and then you build that discipline. And what's helped me is if you have that end vision, in mind, and you're excited about, you're willing to be disciplined and put the work in to get there. So
Yeah.
it's kind of I don't know. There's a lot of ways to do it. That's how I think about things. But yeah, a lot of it does probably go back to athletics.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting note because I haven't thought about it that much, but in listening to you and then even thinking about someone else who I interviewed, his name's Billy Ward, and probably spent a similar amount of time with graduated from Georgetown University, maybe 20. This was 20 years ago for him, and then was on the Baltimore Ravens for a short while, and now in his career he's working a lot to inspire people, make his own impact, and I feel like I'm seeing a lot of the same those same athletes' values and philosophies reflected in what you're doing, which is really great and something I probably need to dig into more. One thing I want to ask as we wrap up is just where can people learn more about you, learn more about Blake Seed Based, and dive into the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so our website is blakesseedbase.com. So, we have kind of a weekly blog. Our products are about us. And then for more behind the scenes, our Instagram. So we're trying to kind of show people what it's like to be in a 3-person startup company. We're packing boxes where it's not the glamorous life people expect. So I would say our Instagram, which is Blake Seed Base, is kind of the day-to-day where you follow us.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, thanks for mentioning the website and Instagram. What are some of those surprising things that I might see if I'm following closely on Instagram that aren't like your typical assumed glamorous startup life things?
So our mascot, if you see it, like we have a parrot. So that's part of the logo, and we have a parrot outfit, which me or one of my teammates will get in weekly. So it kind of humbles us. We'll go pass out samples on the train or in Chicago. So you'll see a lot of people in parrot outfits on our Instagram. And you'll just, like I said before, you'll get behind the scenes. I mean, you'll see that we're packing boxes in the warehouse, at the facility. It's not kind of what people would expect.
Yeah. Well, I'm disappointed that we didn't do this interview with you in the parrot costume. It might have slightly affected the audio of the interview, but I think it totally would have been worth it.
Next time.
Next time. And then we'll have to consider whether we just release the audio or video into audio. But
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
But thanks, Blake, for taking the time out. I know you have a busy schedule, a lot going on, and so I hope people will check out the website, check out Instagram. stay in touch by the bars, whether it's more flavored or whatever they might want to go after. So any like final thoughts just as we wrap up or anything else that you want to share?
No, I'd give credit to you. I mean, I think you're creating an awesome platform for people to tell their stories. And I think the more that we kind of get into business and some of the business that I admire, like Tom's and Patagonia, and they're really solving an issue, and it's a deeper issue than just selling product. And I think that's a great way to, go about business. And those companies have proven that you can, be profitable and make a big difference, which I think is a great thing in this world.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Blake, for giving that perspective. I'm sure that we'll be in touch again sometime soon, and I'm looking forward to the feedback that I get on this conversation. But just as I wrap up, one thing I want to say to you and anyone who's watching, just keeping in mind, of course, it's not easy having an allergy and managing that. It's definitely not easy being an entrepreneur and managing life on top of that. And so I just want to encourage you and anyone watching to keep impacting. So thanks again, Blake.
Thanks, Matt.